What about so you hosted NFL Live from 2003 to 2018. I'm curious if
17.
2017.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there was, in that time period, was there a shift in how hits and concussions were covered? Because like obviously Countdown moved away from the jacked up segment that they had, but was there a point that you remember where NFL Live was kind of told almost to start treating highlights of big hits and collisions differently?
Well, NFL Live was sort of a during the week show. So outside of like, a recap of the Monday night game, there weren't a lot of highlight time things. It was more of analysis packages and breaking down what we saw. I'll never forget one year we were doing something with Trent Dilfer, who was working on the show at the time. And, someone got dinged. He said, well, I don't think I got a concussion. I just got dinged. And we sort of had to learn that is a concussion or a post or subconcussive hit that leads to concussions, right?
Yeah.
So it was this learning process. It wasn't a specific time or a day, but it was a sort of an evolution of just understanding the more and more you learned. And what Chris Nowinski is doing with his great stuff with Concussion Foundation in Boston has sort of opened up a lot of eyes. So it's just a rolling awareness. And I think one of the real changes was when people started sort of self-reporting concussions. Hey, something's not right. I don't feel good. Get me out of the game. And there were a couple times when big name players decided, hey, I need to get out of the game here for a second. That was an indication, okay, the tide has really turned. And I want to be clear, it's always going to be a sliding scale, because if you are a superstar quarterback that has signed a $150 million contract, it's much easier for you to say, hey, I'm not right, take me out, than the gunner on the special teams who's dying to get a second contract and maybe do something in the NFL. So there's always going to be this sliding scale of what you're comfortable with doing. But I think for the most part, most people now understand how significant that is, and it has to be treated very differently than it was even 10 years ago.
With the the way that concussions and hits are viewed differently now, especially even just from 10 years ago. And I would imagine things are going to look different 10 years from now and 10 years from that. Where do you personally view the NFL going long term? Is it always going to still be a very physical sport and product? Or, I mean, is it possible that 40 years from now it's a league of flag football teams?
I don't know if it's ever going to go that far, because people, I mean, like my son played college football and he was an offensive lineman, and Damian Woody and him will say the same things. What I loved about being an offensive lineman is I get to beat somebody's ass for 4 quarters. I get to physically assault somebody and it's okay. So I'm not sure that ever goes away completely, but it's certainly, like, look at the game last night. The hit that was called roughing the passer on Josh Allen. It was
right.
And it's hard on the officials, because we keep asking the officials to do more and more in less time. And I think that's unfair. But none of that hit by Okereke was anywhere near Josh Allen's head and neck. And Terry McCauley, who does a great job with the Sunday Night Crew, said, yeah, that wasn't it. But they're always going to overcall that, right? That's the league mandate. But I will tell you, officials know that it's an impossible task to try and figure that out. There's a former official who I won't give you his name, but he now works in television. And he once told me, he said, Trey, when I was doing the NFL and I was calling games, I thought we did a great job. And then I started watching games the way you guys watch games. And I'm like, man, we do a terrible job. And it's almost unfair, because all of us watch games and we get to see it in this sort of 360-degree view where we see every single angle. They see it linearly, right? They see it like this, and they have to make a split-second decision. I was flying back once from something in LA, and I was sitting next to a guy who was logging a game. I said, oh, do you work for a team? He goes, oh, I'm actually an official. I'm a ref in the NFL. I said, oh, cool. And this was right after the NFC Championship game between the Rams and the Saints. The non-call on Nickel Roby-Coleman that would have set up the game-winning field goal with time expiring for the Saints to go to the Super Bowl that year against the Patriots. And instead the Rams went, and he was like, I was on the field and none of us saw it. And we all watch it. Like, how could you miss it?
Right.
Like, how could you miss such a blatant late hit? Well, they're watching a million different things, and it's not as easy as people think. And it's really, really hard sometimes. What looks so blatantly obvious to us is so much more difficult for them to process, and they're processing it because of this emphasis on concussion issues. So that's why I really, and they're starting to do this in the NFL. The Sky Judge, which has been shot down a couple of times, but they do it. They do the expedited reviews. I wish they would do more of that, because I think it really helps the officials and it takes them out of a very difficult situation.